Hello everyone, welcome back to Vedic Enigma. So I hope that all of you are doing great. And in today's video, we will be talking about personality, appearance, qualities of your future spouse. So this will be through the D9 chart, which is known as the Navamsa chart. And I will keep it quite simple because I had previously made a video on the same topic in Hindi. So some people found it to be a bit confusing because I had mentioned a lot of things, through which you could analyze about the qualities, appearance of the spouse. But in this video, we will only be focusing on the sign and the planets. So the sign planets placed in the seventh house of the Navamsa chart. So like all of you know that if you have seen my previous videos on marriage and on spouse, so the seventh house of the main chart, which is the Rashi chart, it actually represents more of your attitude towards marriage and the kind of spouse that you are looking for, or the kind of people that you get attracted towards. So you will find that, like, if suppose somebody has Sun in the seventh house of their D1 chart, they would be naturally attracted to very confident people, very bold people, people who have a strong Sun. So that is what it is showing basically. But whether you would get such a person or not, it is really dependent on the Navamsha chart. And also sometimes it happens that if we see ourselves also, we have a lot of different personalities, so we are not very similar with respect to the kind of in the manner in which we behave with maybe our mother, our father, or our brother or sister, or with our friends. So we have a very different personality with different people, so depending upon who the person is. Similarly, you might see that if somebody has a very strong influence of, suppose Mars, in the seventh house of their Navamsha chart. So it really shows that with respect to that person and their spouse, the Mars related things would become more dominant, and the spouse would act and would become like that planet, or would start behaving like that planet because, your chart is carrying that energy of Mars in the seventh house. And I have also personally seen this, in my family also, like, because I'm taking example of family because you can see that, how the person, like how your parents are behaving towards you, how they are behaving towards each other. So the energy is very different, So that difference really comes because of the energy of the chart. So that is why this is something which is very important, and I wanted to clarify this because sometimes we see a person and we wonder that this person doesn't look like a person who can be very vocal, who can be very assertive, and who can speak their mind out. Then how is it that this person starts behaving or becomes that person, in the context of marriage? So this is the main reason for it, and this is what the shift you will also observe in the spouse, once you marry them. Sometimes it happens that you marry an individual and initially they look very different. Their nature qualities are very different, and eventually they become into something else. So that also sometimes happens, or there is a change which comes, so that change, for to see that change, it's very important to see that transition, that what is there in the seventh house of the D1 chart, and what is there in the seventh house of the D9 chart. So how is the transitioning happening? On the basis of that, you will see that how their qualities and the way they behave with you will also change with time. And D9, as we know, it's a very important chart, and it is the final chart of your marriage, you can say, because it is showing the fruits of the D1 chart. That it is showing the eventual results, what you are getting with respect to the planets, and also the inherent strength of the planets. Like sometimes we see that Saturn, for example, is debilitated in the sign of Aries in your D1 chart, but it is placed, suppose, in Taurus, or it's exalted in the D9 chart. So it really shows that over time that planet is gaining strength. So like this, you can see for different things, but in this, so let's start with the Rashis first. So from Aries to Pisces, we will talk about each particular zodiac sign. And depending upon which sign falls in the seventh house of your Navamsha chart, you can see that the qualities, characteristics, nature, appearance of the spouse would resemble that particular Rashi. And suppose you have a planet placed there, so then the Rashi becomes a secondary aspect. I'm not saying that it is not important, but that planet will have a major say and major role in deciphering the appearance and the qualities, characteristics of the person. So let's say that you have Aries sign, Mesh Rashi in the seventh house of the D9 chart, and you are a Libra ascendant. So, firstly, we see that this particular sign is ruled by the planet Mars. And this is a Mool Trikona sign, which shows that it is very powerful. And if we see the qualities of this sign, so we know that it's very, hot-headed kind of a planet. Mars, we know that it is very aggressive and prone to anger, and a very authoritative, controlling kind of an energy comes from the sign of Aries because Sun gets exalted in this particular sign. So the spouse will also be very bold, will be very assertive, will be very courageous, to take initiatives for things. So that kind of a thing you will see very strong in the person. The spouse will is not a person who is very timid. He or she is not a person who does not like to say things, whatever they feel like. So they are not people who are very you can say diplomatic or balanced in that sense. They are very assertive, very straightforward people. If they don't like something, they will tell it to you on your face. So that kind of a thing is seen with the Aries sign. And we also see that this is the sign of the first house, of the Kal Purush Kundli. So we know that that house is connected with your body, with your appearance. So they can also be very focused on grooming, on physical appearance, on making themselves more beautiful. So that kind of an energy also comes from the sign of Aries. And they can also be very much involved in physical fitness, health related things, and things in which they become very body conscious, about how they are looking, and they keep maybe observing themselves in the mirror a lot. So these kind of qualities you will see in the person. And also Aries sign is very prone to, like I told you, anger and aggression is also there. But again, for this you have to study the planet. If suppose there is a planet placed in the sign of Aries, then that planet will also have a very strong effect. Or suppose there are aspects, on this particular sign, then also things will differ. So if suppose there are no aspects and there is no planet in this particular house, then you can say that Aries will give a very strong result in this house. And with this, you will see that spouse will also be very adventurous. So they are people who are actually very childlike also in some sense. And they have this, rush energy to do things, to try out different things in life. So they like experimenting a lot, and they love traveling, so movement, any kind of thing which, makes you go to places, try out different things, try out different cultures, travel a lot. So this kind of thing you will see very strong in the spouse. And in whichever profession also they would want to be very, they would want to be best at, whatever they are doing. So that kind of a, you can say, willpower and determination, motivation to do really well in life is also very much there in the sign of Aries. And we also see that this particular sign, it's not very long, in height. Like if you read the classical texts also, like BPHS and Jatak Parijata is also there. So in that also you will see that this particular Rashi is described as, a short Rashi. So, and Mars planet also, you see that it doesn't really give a very long height to someone, so they are not very tall, they are short in height usually, and their complexion is also, blood red in color. That is how it is described. So it is not actually like literally like this red color, but it's more so like, suppose they become angry, so their face, turns red. Their eyes could have a tint of red in them, so some kind of redness is there on the face. And it is also described as, also you will see, and usually, as you know, that Mars is also a very thin planet. It does not give a lot of weight on the body, so it usually gives a slender physique. And like I said, that they are also very focused on their health and fitness. So that is also one of the reasons why there is not a lot of tendency to put on weight, and they can also have a fast metabolism. So these are some of the things that you can derive from the Aries Rashi. And but again, like I said, suppose you have Moon placed in the seventh house, then all these things that I said will differ a lot, because Moon usually gives a plump kind of an appearance and it gives a round body. So again, planet is first, then the Rashi, but you can, see, you can basically combine and mix both the elements together, and then you can see what the result will be. So that is why, just by saying that this particular Rashi is there, so every person who is a Libra ascendant will get a similar kind of a, looking spouse and appearance wise is wrong to say, because again, aspects, conjunction of the planet. Suppose you have three planets, so all the three planets will have a role to play in that. So coming to the next sign, which is the sign of Taurus. So if you have a Scorpio ascendant in the D-9 chart, then Taurus sign will be present in the seventh house. So as we know that this is a sign which is ruled by the planet Venus, and Moon gets exalted in the sign of Taurus. So we see that that is why this particular zodiac sign has a white, or you can say a fair complexion is usually given by the sign of Taurus, and that is what is mentioned in the classical texts also. And if we see this particular zodiac sign, so we know that this is connected with family, with wealth, with resources very strongly. And this is also a fixed sign. So that is why there is that element of stubbornness that naturally comes in the sign of Taurus. It is also a very creative sign. So you can say that the spouse will be very stubborn, will be very resource oriented person, money oriented person. So, and it's a very practical sign because it's an earth element. That earth element is very strong in this particular sign. So we can definitely say that the spouse will be can be very calculative, can be very family oriented, and would be very much like you can say rooted in the culture, traditions, values. So these things will matter a lot to the spouse. And they can definitely love children also, because like I said, it is connected with family. And usually you will see that this sign is a very sweet kind of a sign, because that Venus and Moon energy is very prominent in this sign. So they are not really people who are very focused on arguing with you for no rhyme or reason. And they are usually very peaceful and very easygoing people, who for them comfort is very important. So that will be something that you will notice a lot, that they are not people who even if suppose they have to, and it is a situation that there is no escape and they have to put in that hard work, then they will definitely do it. And they will put in a lot of physical effort in that particular thing. And so they are not really people who you can say that they will choose hard work over smart work. Because if you see the zodiac sign also, it is connected with bull. And in bull you will see that it's a very labor focused kind of a animal also, and which is meant to do more of hard work related things. So they can do that kind of activities also really well if they have to. But otherwise they always choose laid back attitude, comfortable, pleasure seeking, leisure kind of things are their go to things to do in life. And that is why we see that in this particular sign they are not people who will fight for their rights, or those kind of things in which you have to take initiative, you have to take a stand. So they are not people like that. They are very balanced in that sense. Even if they feel, suppose in the marriage also, like your thoughts are not aligning with their thoughts, so they would still listen to you and they would give their opinion, but otherwise they will leave it to the other person only. So they are not very argumentative in that sense. But yes, they are people, for them food is very important. So that will so anytime you feel like you are kind of targeting their territory, in the sense that if you target, suppose food, if you target anything to do with family or anything to do with their comfort, then they can get very irritated and very angry at those things, those particular things only, or anything connected with money, for example. But otherwise, like if you say that you suppose want to do something in life, you want to take and lead your own life in some direction, so they are not very interfering in those kind of aspects. So for them, all the second house related things become very important. So that will be something that you will definitely observe in the spouse's nature, in the way that they behave with you. So these are some of the things about the sign of Taurus. And again, like we know that they can also be very moody. So moodiness also comes from the sign of Taurus. And very pleasure seeking behavior would be there, like they can be very creative also, especially if suppose you see that some planet is placed in the seventh house, like you have Venus there, you have Moon there, or you have Mercury in the sign of Taurus. So you will see that their nature can be very creative. They can be even fond of singing, so all those things also come from the sign of Taurus. So they can be also very fond of sweets, so food, sweets, anything that is very tasty and rich, so they are very fond of those things. And when it comes to the appearance part also, so you will see that, like I mentioned, it usually gives a fair complexion and like not very tall in height. So it usually gives a short height again, just like the sign of Aries. So these are some of the things that you will see about the sign of Taurus. Moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Gemini. So the sign of Gemini, like we know, it is a dual Rashi and it is ruled by the planet Mercury. And we see that this is a sign of twins, So if even if you see the symbol, you will see that that duality is present in symbol also. And that is why Gemini is actually known to be a very fickle-minded, sign, because that duality is always there. That confusion or some kind of a dilemma is always there. So that is something, that confusion or dilemma you will see in the spouse also. So either every time, in even if you observe very minute things about the spouse also, you will see that. For example, they will be very fond of multitasking. Multitasking is also a form of duality because you are doing two things at the same time, which shows that they somewhere lack patience. The listening skills are not up to the mark. So Gemini people are literally like kids. So they want life to be playful. They want to do different kind of activities all the time. They love having different hobbies. So they are not people who can sit at one place for too long, or even if you like tell them to meditate, that is something which will be a very difficult task for a Gemini ruled person. And these are the qualities you will see in the spouse also. And but yes, the spouse will be very sharp, in the sense that of they are not people who just wait for things to happen to them. So they are very quick at taking actions towards things. And if suppose they know that these are the things that they have to do, so they are not people who will procrastinate those things a lot. So in that sense, because it's a very quick-witted sign, so they love to, even make lists to do to-do lists, and all those things also they like doing, and they love ticking those things also off. So they are people who are, in a way, you can say, not exactly organized, but they are not people who just wait for things to pile up in their life. So that is a characteristic that you will see about the sign of Gemini. And with this particular sign, again, you will see that they would love traveling. They would love experimentation, like experimenting with different things, with different, like, like languages also, like, learning different languages, learning different skills. So all these things become very prominent in the person. And again, you will see for them, the number one thing which becomes the most important, is communication, is expression. If suppose they are not able to express themselves very openly with you, they are not able to communicate, so they will feel very unhappy, like they'll feel that their marriage is not working to the level that it should work. So again, communication becomes extremely important, and trying out different things with the spouse, and sharing everything with the spouse also becomes very important. So these are some of the qualities of the sign of Gemini. And if we see the particular, in the classical texts also we see, then you will observe that the height, which is mentioned for different zodiac signs. So Gemini usually does not give a very, long, like very tall height. Neither it gives a very short height. So the complexion also is somewhere in the middle, and the height is also somewhere in the middle, so it is mentioned as even length, so it is not neither too short, neither too long. So in the middle you can say that the height and the appearance also of the person would be like that. But definitely, again, I'm saying that suppose you have a planet, placed there, like you have, for example, Venus placed there. So then Venus will become more prominent, in terms of the qualities, characteristics, appearance of the person. So in that manner, sign becomes secondary. But if suppose you don't have any planet placed there, then you definitely have to look at the sign. So let's talk about the next sign now, which is the sign of Cancer. So if suppose you are a Capricorn ascendant in the D9 chart, then the sign of Cancer will come in the seventh house. So we know that the sign of Cancer is ruled by Moon, and it is a watery sign. And we also see that, in the spouse, you will see Moon-like qualities will now dominate, the nature of the person. And we know that Moon is also a very fickle-minded planet. It is very moody, it is very emotional in nature. And it also has a very strong, caring, nurturing kind of abilities, and attitude is like that. So again, Cancer sign people, they are usually not people who will kind of retaliate, or who would argue with you for no reason. And in general, also, they are not at all violent people. They are very peaceful, very, they want to live in harmony. And, for them, violence is never the solution of anything. And you will see that somewhere the problem with Cancer sign can come is with respect to moodiness. So they are people who, sometimes don't have control on their emotions. If they are happy, they are very, very happy, and they will maybe start crying also. They'll start becoming emotional about things. And sometimes if they are sad, then they can be very sad also. So that kind of an extreme can also be there. Now again, to see the intensity, extent to which this will be there, you have to again see the aspects. Suppose you have some planet placed there, so you need to study the planet also. So that will also differ, but in general you will observe these kind of things, that generally the person is a soft person. They are very warm, they are not very, and they can be timid also. So they get scared of things very easily. Like, if suppose of they can be scared of heights, for example. They can be scared of animals, some like dog or cat. So they are not people who are very fearless in that sense. Like, suppose Mars was there. Mars is a very fearless kind of a planet, very bold. But the sign of Cancer, and Moon is a very kind of a soft planet. But the positive aspect is that they are people who, in a way, you can say that they can be very easily influenced also sometimes. So that can also be a negative trait. Like, if suppose you tell them something, because it is like water, and water can change its form and its shape, and it's not very fixed. So that is why you tell something to them, they can be influenced in that direction. Somebody else tells them something, they can be influenced by that person also. So that again becomes a bit of a negative. So you can't be influenced by each and every person who is coming into your life. But again, you can say that they are internally very pure people, so they don't have anything negative against any person in general. They are not very jealous people like that. So they are people who actually just want to spread love and harmony, in everybody's life. So in general, that purity, also be associated with the sign of Cancer. And you will also see that again, the person can be very fond of food, because Moon represents food. A person can be very emotional and sentimental about their house, about their vehicle. So these are the things that, or about their mother. So these are the things that this person kind of keeps, very close to their heart. So they become very emotional about those kind of things. And you can also see that they get their best kind of comfort, or they feel at peace when they are in their home. So they are not really people who are very outgoing in that sense, or very, very social. So they love that internal peace. If that is not there in their life, then everything feels very meaningless. So that is something which they give that particular thing the most priority in their marriage, in their married life, and in general also. And again, for marriage also, you will see that emotions and emotional connect becomes very important for them. Like, if suppose they don't find that connect with you, or they are not able to emotionally engage with you, then again they would not, they will start acting moody. So that is again a thing you will see with respect to the sign of Cancer. Now again, suppose you have a planet placed there, planet will change a lot of things. Like, if you put suppose Rahu in the sign of Cancer, it is a whole different energy altogether. So again, excluding the planet, if you see, like, if suppose you don't have any planet, just the sign of Cancer will give you all these results. And again, if we mention about the physical appearance and the height, again, Cancer does not give a very tall height. It's a short, it gives a short height. And in terms of appearance, also, if you read the classical text, it says a round body, fair complexion, round body. So again, this is a watery sign. It makes a person a bit plump. Even if their body will not be plump, that is what I have observed. Their face could be very round. So some people like have a very round face, but their body is very thin. So that can also be a possibility. Like for example, Anushka Sharma, if you see, her face is actually very round. So that there is this part which is very plump, but she has a lean body. And you can see that Virat Kohli has Venus with Moon. So Venus is spouse and it is conjunct Moon. So like this, you can see, the results of the sign of Cancer. Moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Leo. So suppose you are an Aquarius ascendant in the D9 chart. So you will find the sign of Leo in the seventh house. So Leo, as we know, it is the sign ruled by Sun, and it is a Mool Trikona sign, which shows that it is very strong and powerful. And when sun comes, like this energy of sun is coming in the seventh house, it shows that the spouse that you will get, and or eventually the spouse will become like that, will become very confident, with you, and will be very clear, straightforward, and will have that commanding nature. So there are some people who can command attention, and people have to listen to them. So that kind of an aura the spouse will give. Either so internally you will see that those traits and qualities will be there in the spouse inherently. It's not that some person becomes like that overnight. But what happens when you get married to them, like the Navamsa chart gets activated very strongly, and then you will see that the spouse will start behaving like that particular sign. You will also see that the spouse will be very fond of children and can be obsessed, or some kind of theme can be there around children as well, in which the person would be like they definitely want to have a family and they want to have that thing going on. And you will also see with this, the spouse will be very bold, will be very courageous, and will have very strong leadership qualities also. So, depending upon how powerful now Sun is placed in your D9 chart, that will be the power that the spouse will hold. So suppose Sun becomes exalted, in the D9 chart, then you will see that the spouse will have an exalted kind of a personality, will be very, very powerful. Or suppose you see Sun is in the sign of Taurus or it's in Libra, then you can say that it's not a very strong kind of a powerful Sun. Or if suppose you have any planet placed there in the seventh house, then that planet will dominate, you know. So that is how the results and qualities will differ, but sun definitely gives that kind of a command. And they can sometimes also be seen as people who can be dominating, in a marriage, or they want to dominate. So that kind of a thing always sun kind of gives in the person. And if we see the classical texts also, then also we see that sun usually gives a very a squarish kind of a body. So, and also if we see the particular color that is associated, like in the classical texts like BPHS and Jatak Parijata, if you read about it, so they have mentioned pale white as the complexion for the sign of Leo. So again, these are some of the things that are mentioned in the classical texts, which we can use for our knowledge and reference. And in Jataka Parijata, we also see that the height, like there are different kind of heights mentioned. Like some signs are short, some signs are of even length, some signs are very tall and long. So sun, like the sign of Leo, is mentioned as being having a tall height. So the stature can be tall. So that is according to the classical text. But through these things, you can decipher and derive, what will be the kind of qualities that you can find in your spouse. And we also see that the sign of Leo is originally the fifth house, of the Kalpurush Kundli. And fifth house is also connected with pleasure. It's connected with entertainment. It's connected with things which are very creative in nature. So you with this, you can also find the spouse can be very creative, in some way artistic, or they can have some kind of a talent in them. So that is also which you will observe. And wherever they go, they can shine, so every person's attention will be on them. So that kind of a quality also sun gives. Or they could come from a family which has some association with royalty, or is connected with government, for example, because sun represents those things as well. So coming to the next sign, which is the sign of Virgo. So suppose you are a Pisces ascendant in the Navamsa chart, then the sign of Virgo will come in your seventh house. So we know that Virgo sign is the Mool Trikona Rashi of the planet Mercury. So it is a very strong and powerful Rashi. And it is an even sign, so it has a very feminine quality, in this particular sign. And if you see the classification of zodiac signs also, so all the odd signs are considered to be have that masculine energy. And if we see the even signs like Taurus, like Vrishik, like Scorpio is there, like Virgo is there, Pisces, so they are feminine signs in the sense that the energy of these signs is a bit softer. Like you see Aries also. Aries is an even sign. Aries is an odd sign, and you see that it's a Mutrikona sign of Mars, so that it is a very strong and powerful sign as compared to Scorpio. Scorpio is an even sign. So like this, you can say that the sign of Virgo, and also if you see the symbol, like if you read about the story like of the symbol, also you will see that there is a female and she's on a boat and she's carrying some wheat, and there is that lamp in her hand. So in that also there is a female, and we also associate the Virgin with the sign of Virgo. So again, like that purity, that feminineness is very strong in this particular sign. So we can say that firstly, the spouse, whether a male or a female, will be feminine in some aspect. So that softness and that femininity is there in the person. And we also see that this is a sign in which Mercury is exalted. So we know that Mercury is a very practical, very calculative kind of a planet. Similarly, the spouse will also be very practical, very analytical, logical, calculative kind of a person. Can be very money minded also, and can be very focused on doing a particular task. Like they are people who are you have read about this also, and you have heard it many times that they are perfectionists. So they are very organized, very structured, how they want to do things. Now again, how you need to see this, that it will not be true for all people. You will find many people who are Pisces ascendants, and their spouse will not be like this. So it really depends on how strong Mercury is placed in the chart. Suppose you find that Mercury is debilitated, like suppose you are a Pisces ascendant and Mercury is in the Lagna only. So now the seventh lord has become debilitated, right? And it is no longer that powerful, and no longer that in that much strength. So, and now the sign of Pisces qualities will also be there in the spouse. So that is why these things will not match. Now, but suppose you find a chart in which Mercury is exalted in the seventh house, then you can say that yes, these qualities of Mercury will be very strongly present in the spouse. So that is how, according to the sign also in which Mercury is placed, you have to judge and assess. But generally, you will observe that, these are the qualities which Virgo sign gives. And they are also very picky, with respect to things. Like they are not people who will they become very selective with respect to everything. Like Pisces has that very broad and very, free flowing kind of an energy. Virgo is a very selective, very, it is like a funnel. So when you see the funnel also, the funnel is kind of very narrowed down, towards the end. So you can say that maybe the broad part of the funnel is like Pisces and the narrow part is like Virgo. And the kind of work also that this particular sign involves, like editing things, like critiquing things. So they are very specific, things. And so that is why they are people who are very focused on their memory also. Like they remember things very well, and they rely on their memory a lot. So that is why they are the people who kind of sometimes bring things of the past also, because they remember things so well. So that can also be a bit problem creator in the marriage sometimes. And we also see that this is a sign in which Venus gets debilitated. So Venus is not very comfortable in the sign of Virgo generally. So that is why these negative qualities of Virgo can sometimes become problematic, in the person. And but generally, you will see that this person, the spouse, will be very focused on their health also, because this sign is associated with health and fitness. It's the original sixth house. So they can also be very service oriented. So that, service to humanity, that kind of an attitude can be there in the person. And like, especially if suppose you have moon, in the sign of Virgo in the seventh house, and it really tells that spouse is someone who loves to heal people, loves to nurture, care for people, so that thing will be very prominent in the person. And generally also Virgo sign is considered a very helpful kind of a sign, because in the sixth house it falls, where you are basically doing help to people, where you are helping people. So doctors are seen from this, lawyers are seen from this, any kind of profession which is connected with NGO work, with social work, that is also seen from the sign of Virgo. So that is again that aspect of Virgo where you will find that purity is there, that helpful nature is there. But Virgo on the other end can also make you someone who is very calculative, who might be, the spouse might not be of this nature, but might be doing some normal job in a company where maybe they are involved in a work where there is a lot of analysis, and that kind of a nature is coming out very strongly. But generally, you will see that with this, the spouse will be very active, in terms of they are not the people who like to sit at one place for too long or become very lazy, so they are on the go. They are always doing something, and very curious about learning. So that curiosity to learn more, to grow more is always there in the sign of Virgo. They could even be fond of reading, for example, or learning about new facts, and like that playful energy is also there, in the sign of Virgo. And it's also there in Gemini. But in Virgo, to a lesser extent, in Gemini, it is more. But if you suppose have the planet placed there, like if you have Venus or you have Mercury, then you can expect like more, kind of these qualities would be there in the person. So again, this is just on the basis of the zodiac sign. If you have a planet placed there, you have to give more importance to the planet. And if you see, the particular like physical complexion and the height and appearance, of the spouse. So Virgo is generally, you will see it is considered a long zodiac sign, like if you read the classical text. So it does not give a very short height to the person. That is what is mentioned in the classical text. And similarly, like, the sign of Libra also gives a long height. So they both are actually long. And in terms of the complexion, you will see that, Mercury is a very mixed kind of a complexion, so it can be a bit tricky to understand this also, because it is neither very fair nor it is very dark. So it's either like something which is there in the middle. And in classical text, you will also see that it is mentioned as, somewhere which is variegated. That is the word that is mentioned for the planet Mercury, also for mercurial signs also. So this color also, if you have to understand it, is sometimes you will see leaves. So leaves become like that. Like there is those patches that come in the leaves. So there is dark green also, there is light green also, so some mixture like that is kind of mentioned. So it could be that maybe the spouse also has a very mixed kind of a complexion. So that is one connotation you can, make out of it. Or maybe they have something in their skin which makes their veins very prominent, because veins also, if we see, are green in color. And if somebody is like, suppose, very fair in complexion, so their veins would also stand out a lot. So that could also be a possibility with this. But again, it's very much up to your interpretation on how you are interpreting it. But some kind of element of mixed, that element will be there in the person's complexion. That is what it shows. So it doesn't really like show a very uniform kind of a complexion. It shows some kind of a thing which would stand out, in some sense, or it would be mixed. So that is how you can interpret it. Moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Libra. So we know that Libra is a sign which is ruled by the planet Venus itself. And we also see that this is the Mool Trikona sign of Venus. So it's a very strong and a very powerful, Rashi, in which Saturn also gets exalted. So firstly, you will see that if suppose like you are a Aries ascendant with this and Libra is in your seventh house, so the spouse will have very strong Venus related traits. Like the spouse would be very creative, would be very could be very fond of grooming herself or himself, like would be very presentable, would be very sweet, diplomatic. So that is those are the kind of things which we associate with this particular sign. And they are not people who it's a energy which is opposite of Aries. So Aries is a very cutthroat, very blunt kind of an energy, whereas Libra is a very believes in diplomacy. So they are balanced in that sense. They are people who like to mitigate conflicts. So they are people who can become very good negotiators. So or they are people who can unite two people together. So these are the kind of things which we expect out of the sign of Libra. And again, you will see another thing that the spouse would be very social also, because Libra, as we know, it falls in the seventh house, which is the house of other people. So they are either involved in doing something which is connected with the public, which is connected with the masses. They can do their own business in which they have a lot of clients. So some kind of thing can be there, or they are very social. They love attending parties. They are very public. Especially if you see, like if you have planets like Rahu, Mercury, Venus, impacting this particular house, like if you have these planets placed in the seventh house or aspecting, then these things would be even more. So that is how you need to interpret, this particular sign. But in general, you will observe that, the artistic or that sweet side of Venus would be very prominent in the person. And they are people who actually really value, money. They value that companionship. They value relationships, marriage. So all these things are naturally very important to the spouse. So it is important for them to enjoy that life, to have that pleasure, and all that Venus related things like luxury, materialism becomes very important for them. And if suppose these things are quite missing from their life, then they would feel very incomplete, So it really, really matters a lot to them. And again, they are not really people who are, like I mentioned, very argumentative, or they are not people who will be very blunt also about, what they think about you, or in terms of complimenting also. So there are people generally that Libra sign has that quality of appreciating people, of complimenting people, seeing the good in others. So that is how this sign really operates. And it is also the sign of business, because in business also you have to be like Mercury. You have to be, that balanced energy has to be there. You can't be very blunt. That is not how it is business is done. So that kind of a sense is also very, very strong in them. That is why they are very good at maintaining relationships with people, also forming new relationships with people. So they really know how to get their work done from people also. So that is also a quality which you will see very strongly in your spouse. And people keep saying that Venus is about beauty, Venus is about a very beautiful appearance, but really that beauty is dependent upon how you are viewing it. Like it is not so much to do with complexion. Also, it is not so much to do with your appearance, your height also, but it is really to do with that beauty of the inner self more. And the qualities and the traits that you have. Like suppose you find a person who is very um, who's like a model, who has a model like face, who according to someone is very, very pretty or very, very beautiful on the outside. But if they suppose are behaving very badly with you, they are exactly like Mars, that energy is there. Like they are very aggressive, and they are very blunt, and they are very rude, so you will really not call them beautiful. You will not call them to have a strong Venus, because their Venus would actually be damaged. So that is a very wrong way of seeing this particular thing or any particular combination, because you have to really see that person and those things in terms of the qualities that they are attributing, like how they are behaving with you. So that is how you will judge that how strong that particular planet might be. And we also see that, like, suppose you have a planet placed in the sign of Libra, then all these things will actually differ a lot, because the planet will play a very strong influence then. And in terms of the height, also, like I mentioned, that there are a few classical tests that have mentioned different heights of the zodiac signs. So Libra is also mentioned as, having a long height, like long, or you can say tall height, just like, the sign of Virgo. So that is what is mentioned in the classical text. But again, depending upon the planet and the aspects, this particular thing will also differ. So moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Scorpio. So suppose you are a Taurus ascendant in the D-9 chart, then Scorpio Rashi will be present in your seventh house. So we know that Scorpio is the second sign that is ruled by the planet Mars, and Aries is the moon Trikona sign of Mars. And Scorpio, like I mentioned, earlier in the video, also it is an even sign. So that Aries has that masculine, odd, sign energy. Scorpio is has a bit subtle energy of Mars, and that energy is more inwards, rather than outwards. So Aries would be more of a anger outburst. So Scorpio would be like an anger repression. So that is the difference between the two. So with Scorpio sign, you will observe that the spouse can be, dealing with certain things, and they would maybe like be angry at you also, but they will again repress those things. So it is not an anger that is very openly expressed. Or anger is one emotion. There can be other emotions also. Same is with all emotions. So there are people who like to keep emotions to themselves. They are not very expressive in terms of that. And again, it also makes this particular Rashi very secretive also. Secretive people tend to view this word as being negative only. It can sometimes be in a positive sense also, so they are not really people who would even go around telling what is happening in their marriage to other people, so that is a positive aspect of being secretive. Whereas there could be like a planet like Mercury would, love telling everything, whatever is happening in their marriage to maybe their friends, to their people in the family, which can create more problems sometimes. So Scorpio Rashi is very cautious in that sense. So spouse will also be very cautious, will be very, can be introverted also, in some sense. And like I mentioned, secrecy and repressed emotions are very strong in the person. And they can also have a very strong collection of memory related to past events. What all happens in the marriage. They don't forget things very easily. or they kind of keep those things very repressed. They don't express it, and but they don't forget it also. So that is also a tendency with this particular sign. And you will also see that some kind of a mysterious nature would also be there associated with the spouse. Like some kind of a thing would be there which would make them stand out, or which would be very different in them. Now, this is coming due to the influence of the planet Ketu, because we know that Ketu also co-rules the sign of Scorpio. So, depending upon that, which planet out of Mars or Ketu is becoming prominent in your D9 chart, the spouse will have traits more related to that planet. So suppose you find that Ketu is present in the sign of Pisces, or Ketu is in the sign of Scorpio or Cancer. So in these water signs, Ketu is more strong. Or you find that Ketu is associated with more number of planets, and it is suppose sitting with an exalted planet. Then again, you can say very confidently that spouse will have more Ketu related traits. But if suppose you have Mars very strong, prominent in the D9 chart, you have exalted Mars, or you have Mars in Mool Trikona Rashi, then you can say that Mars qualities will dominate in the spouse. So the energy of both these planets are also very different in some sense, but certain things are very similar also. Like you will see Scorpio and sorry, Mars and Ketu both have that blunt energy. They are both are very straightforward planets. So they are not planets that cutting tendency is there in both. So that thing would also be there somewhere in the spouse. So that can be a possibility with this particular sign. And you will also find that the spouse's nature can be very sudden also, in the sense that very unpredictable sometimes. People do certain things which are just very unexpected, like nothing. Like suppose I'll give you an example, like how this energy can operate. Like suppose you had some bit of a difference of opinion with the spouse, and the thing you just ignored, and you felt like, okay, some difference of opinion was there on a topic or discussion, and it got resolved, but it doesn't get resolved, with Scorpio. And what happens is that then something else will happen. Then the spouse will maybe get a bit more angry, bit more angry. And then one day the spouse just comes up to you and just does something very drastic. And then you are very shocked that what happened. I was not expecting something like this. But you don't realize is that in the background, there are so many things that were actually adding up. So that build up happens in this particular Rashi. So in some sense, you will say that Aries sign is more beneficial, because whatever is there, it's very outwardly, so it is open expression is there, and that thing is not repressed internally. But with Scorpio, sometimes it's difficult to predict about what this person is next going to do, how they're going to behave. So that extreme moodiness can also be given by the sign of Scorpio, like especially if you have moon in the sign of Scorpio in the D9 chart. So you will see that the spouse can be very unpredictable, very moody, so that mood can also be at extremes. And again, like because I mentioned about extreme, so you will see that in certain cases, spouse can also be very, very passionate, like in the relationship, and they want to go to the depth of things, they want to have a very deep relationship with you. They want you to share everything with them. So those kind of things also you will see with this sign, that is also one of the ways in which it kind of acts upon you. But again, that is the positive aspect of Scorpio. But in the negative side, sometimes it can show some unpredictable and these kind of things also. But if you have, suppose, a planet placed there, then that planet will dominate. Then you no longer need to see the sign so much, but that planet will have a much stronger role and influence and, say. And like, suppose I'll give you an example, like if you have the planet Mercury, so Mercury in Scorpio in the seventh house of the D9. So the spouse would want to have like in-depth conversations with you about everything. That conversation. So if we talk about the height, of this particular zodiac sign, so if you see the classical text like Jatak Parijata, in that it is mentioned that the sign of Vrishik, which is the sign of Scorpio, has a very tall height. Like has a long length. So you can correlate it with having a tall height. So like this, you can see for different zodiac signs that what is mentioned. And if you read about the complexion part, like for example in BPHS, it is mentioned blood red complexion, and with the sign of Scorpio, and even with Aries and Mars, so all these give a very blood red kind of complexion. So it is not like really a kind of red kind of a complexion as in, but You can imagine it as maybe something like Donald Trump, like how his complexion is, even though he's very fair, but his face is quite red, all the time almost. So that is something which it can give. And so he has Mars in the Lagna, and in the sign of Leo. So you can clearly see that Mars is very strong in the person. And even like we say that, when we become angry, so, the cheeks become very red, so it happens with me also. But so like this also, you can see that, which planet is dominant. So this is one way by which you can identify, but definitely planet to planet, things will differ a lot. And because planet has that very strong energy, that so if a planet is there, you cannot ignore it. Moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Sagittarius. So suppose you are a Gemini ascendant in the Navamsa chart. So Sagittarius will fall in the seventh house. And we know that this is also a dual Rashi, and it is ruled by Jupiter, and it is a Mutrikon Rashi. So it is a very strong masculine Rashi. And so we know that the spouse will also be very confident, will be a bold person, and where the principles, morals, ethics of the person will matter a lot. Like to the spouse, these things will matter a lot. Like good education, because it is the original sign, Sagittarius, which falls in the ninth house of higher education. So knowledge is again something which they value a lot. And the spouse can also be very, very knowledgeable, or they can be religious or spiritual also by nature. So that dharma focused inclination is very strong in the person. And the most important thing for them is righteousness. So that is something which I have observed, like being moralistic, fighting for the right cause. So, like sometimes you will see that Aries sign is also fighting, but it's maybe fighting for no reason. But Sagittarius is fighting with a cause for the right cause. So it's a very justice-oriented Rashi, and that is those are the kind of qualities that you will see in the spouse also. Like they will be people who will not tolerate any kind of dishonesty from you. They will not like if somebody cheats on them or if somebody lies to them. And you will think these are the things which every person would get offended from. But for a Sagittarius person, these things really, really mean a lot to them. So that is how you have to see the nature of the person. And the again, the spouse is somebody who is very truthful, by nature, and they expect the same from you also. And they can also be very good advisors, or they could be maybe involved in a work where they are counseling people, they are advising people, or they're doing something in strategy. So those are the things which are the theme of this particular Rashi. And so, depending upon how strong now Jupiter is in your chart, in the D9 chart, that will show the strength of the spouse, like how commanding of a nature the spouse will have. Now, suppose Jupiter is exalted or Jupiter is very strong, or suppose Jupiter is in the seventh house in Sagittarius, then you can say the spouse will be very, very strongly governed by the planet Jupiter. And coming to the complexion part and the height part, so for this, I'm referring to the classical texts like BPHS and Jatak Parijata, in which it is mentioned about the signs, the complexion of the signs, the height of the signs, and and some other details are also mentioned. So in that about Sagittarius also, you will see that even with Jupiter, you will see that, tawny complexion is mentioned in the classical text. So tawny is actually a mix of, you can say, orange and yellow. So somewhere it is in the shade of brown, but it has that glowy brown, like glowy orange or sun-kissed kind of a look, you can say. So that glow is there, somewhere with that complexion. So it's not a very, like you can say, a complexion which is very striking in that sense, but it has that hue of goldenish, brownish, orange, something like a mix of all these combined together. And even with respect to the eyes part, also, like if you see the description of Jupiter, it is mentioned tawny eyes also. So again, the same colored eyes. So I think it is a color which some dogs also have, like they also have the, like especially German shepherds, they have that color which even I don't know the exact color what it is, but that is the thing which is coming to my mind. So that kind of a color, so you can imagine like something like honey colored, goldenish, orangish brown, something like that. And with respect to the body part also, it is mentioned that they have a large, big body, because Jupiter usually gives a bulky kind of a body. But this is what you will observe if you see charts, that it is not always a bulky body, but it shows that the body will be very strong. Even with respect to, like, you see the Sagittarius person, they don't have a very flimsy body structure. This is what I have observed. They have a very well built body, and even if they might not be very fat, or they might not be very bulky, but their body has a lot of strength. And there are some people who are very, very thin, like, they are very flimsy. So that could be like a more of a Mercury related body, like with Virgo ascendants, with Gemini ascendants, I have seen that. But with Sagittarius, with Aries also, even with Leo, it will give a very, like all these fire signs, it gives a very strong, well built body. So this is how, you have to see the appearance part also, you can see. And moving to the next sign, which is the sign of Capricorn. So we know that Capricorn is a sign which is ruled by the planet Saturn. And this is an even sign, so it has that feminine energy in it, as compared to, if we see the sign of Aquarius, which is an odd sign. So both are ruled by Saturn, but this has a more feminine nature in it. And we also see that this is a sign in which Jupiter gets debilitated and Mars is exalted in this particular Rashi, and it's the original 10th house of the Kalpurush Kundu. So by this we see that, with respect to the spouse, you will see that firstly the spouse is someone who is a very realistic person, so that, like, they would definitely keep talking about being practical, being realistic, they'll be very mature for their age. And they are people who have maybe experienced a lot in their life, and they have seen life in a different way, which you have not seen it. So they know the reality of things. They have experienced and gone through so much that they know what they are saying, and that is what sometimes gives them a lot of depth, so from where they're coming from. And it also shows that generally they are not people who are very happy-go-lucky kind of people, like, so that kind of a nature is not so much evident in a Capricorn sign. So they are people who are more sober, they are a bit serious, they are very mature, because, and they are people who are very, very strong on commitment, so they are not people who will kind of leave things just like that. So that resilience part, that inner strength is very strong and high in them, because you see that Mars gets exalted in this Rashi. So they are not really people who give up very easily on things, even if something happens in a relationship, in a marriage, and things are not going in the way that you want them to go, but they are not people who will just leave it like that. So they have that patience to kind of resolve things. So that is one very strong positive side of the sign of Capricorn. They can but be very work oriented. So you will find that in some cases they can be workaholics also, and very traditional in their mindset. So they are not really people who are very open to trying out new things, like experimentation of new things. And that kind of a thing is not very much there in them. They like the routine a lot, how things are going, and they want to live things, they want to live life in a structured manner, so that structure is very important. And they are not really people who are ready to kind of let go of their old customs and traditions also very easily. So they are people who will, stay strong on those things. And you will also find that in some cases they would be, now depending upon how strong Saturn is in the chart, they would be very focused on attaining a particular designation, attaining a particular level in their job. So by that, they are very motivated, and that is something which gives them a lot of rush in life. Where if suppose their portfolio is, getting expanded, and they are getting more number of people, like their span of control is increasing, people are recognizing them more, and more responsibilities are being given to them. So that is something which they really, really look forward to. Like, how people are viewing them in the society, what is that image, perception of people, that matters a lot to them. So that is something which is kind of linked to their self-esteem, you can say. So these are some of the things which, you will see about the sign of Capricorn. And so again, talking about some other details about the sign of Capricorn. So you will see that in the classical text, like it is mentioned that Capricorn has an even length. So it shows that the height, is not mentioned as very tall, neither it is mentioned as very short. So it's somewhere in the middle, like medium height, you can say. And Capricorn, as we know that, Mars gets exalted in this particular Rashi. So it is more like, of the color also that you see, it is the word that is mentioned is variegated. So that is also the same word which is mentioned for, this sign of Gemini, Virgo, and for Mercury planet also. And but again, you can't really take it literally. So some things are mentioned like that in the classical text, but you really have to apply it on the charts and see, that what results are coming. And with respect to the complexion, again, the planet place there has a very strong role to play. So suppose if you have a planet place there, then that planet will dominate the appearance and the complexion part more. Even the physical nature will be more dominated by the planet itself. And coming to the next sign, which is the sign of Aquarius, so which is known as Kumbh, in Hindi. And so, suppose you are a Leo ascendant in the Navamsa chart, then Aquarius Rashi will come in your seventh house. And we know that this is a Rashi which is actually ruled by two planets. So, Saturn rules it and Rahu co-rules it. So Rahu's influence is also very much there on this particular Rashi. That is why, even though Saturn is also ruling this, but Capricorn and Aquarius operate very differently, in terms of their qualities. So suppose you find that in your D9 chart, Rahu is more strong and dominant, like Rahu is sitting with an exalted planet. Rahu is in Gemini or in Taurus, Libra, Virgo. These are Rashis in which it performs well. Or it's sitting in a powerful Kendra house, then you can see that Rahu is dominating, and definitely the spouse will also have more Rahu-like traits. And if suppose you have Saturn very strong in the Navamsa chart, like you have Saturn exalted, or you have Saturn in Taurus, or you have it visiting with Mercury, Venus, like it's sitting with its friends. So you can say that Saturn is now prominent in the chart. So suppose you have Rahu traits more, prominent, then you can say the spouse will be more unconventional, because Aquarius is also very unconventional, a bit of an eccentric sign, and doing things, very differently from what other people think. Like, but again, very abstract minded person, somebody who has that daring nature also. So Aquarius is also very bold and a daring sign. It's not like Aries, like of Aries type of a daring, nature, but again, like rebel nature is there in Aquarius. We are very stubborn with respect to what they think is right, what they believe is right, and they can even go against the customs, traditions, and so all those things, because that Rahu energy is very strong in this particular Rashi. So, and also we know Aquarius is also fixed sign. So we have like Taurus, Leo. So all these fixed signs also have that stubborn element in them, in some sense. Like Leo is also a very stubborn sign, and so is Aquarius. And so we also see that with respect to Aquarius on the Rahu side more, the spouse can come from a different community. That is one possibility, one combination for that. And the spouse can have a very different kind of an upbringing as compared to the kind of family in which you have been born and brought up in. Or maybe they kind of grew up in a very different city, in a different culture, in a different country, so a different language. So all that difference kind of starts coming into the way. And the positive side of this particular Aquarius sign is that the spouse will be very ambitious, and will push you to do well in life. Like they are the people who can motivate somebody really well, and they are people who can also be very resourceful, to not only to the spouse but also to other people, to their friends. So Aquarius is a very resourceful, very helpful kind of a sign, and it is also a sign which believes in connecting people. So you will observe that this quality about your spouse, that they will be the people who will connect different people together. They will be the person who will initiate and take action towards helping, saving things, at a large scale. So they can be involved in some humanitarian activities also. So those are the things, positive things of the sign of Aquarius that you will observe in the spouse. But if you observe that Saturn is more prominent and dominant in your chart, then you can say the spouse can be a bit traditional, but for that, Saturn needs to be strong. And all these things that I mentioned about the Rahu side more, the Rahu side will not be there so much, but the Saturn will now will now dominate this particular, combination. And with this, you can say again, the spouse will be very humanitarian, will be very helpful, resourceful. That thing will be there. But the spouse will not be a person who will be very flamboyant, in that. Like because Saturn is more of a humble planet, it's a more like inwardly planet in that sense. Rahu is more of an outwardly kind of an energy. So may not be so much of a party person also, like with Saturn, but with Rahu's energy being more prominent, the spouse will be very flamboyant, will be very luxurious also, like will like materialistic things a lot. With Saturn, not so much necessarily. So this is how we have to study depending upon which particular planet now here dominates, this particular sign. And definitely, if you have a planet suppose placed there, then that planet will definitely dominate this particular combination more. And you have to now see the significations, everything according to that planet way. And we see with this particular Rashi also with Kumbh, with Aquarius, with respect to the height part. It is mentioned in the classical text that it doesn't really give a very tall height to the person, so it is in the short height part. And with respect to the complexion part, also we see that it is more of like a deep brown is the complexion that is mentioned for the sign of Aquarius. But again, depending upon planets, aspects, all these things will differ a lot. So sometimes that is why we see that these things are not so accurate to that level. But again, the information that was mentioned, I am sharing all that with you. And coming to the last sign now, which is the sign of Pisces. So we see that Pisces is the Rashi which is ruled by Jupiter. And if suppose you are a Virgo ascendant, then Pisces will fall in your seventh house. And it is a dual Rashi, we know. And we also know that Pisces is the Rashi in which Venus gets exalted. And it has that femininity very strongly in there, right? So you will see the spouse, whether a male or a female, will be very feminine, will be very soft, gentle, warmth will be there in the person, and very inherent goodness is there in the person. That is what comes with the sign of Pisces, because it is based on being very pure from inside. Like how Cancer is also very pure sign, Pisces is also very pure sign. And we also find that this is a sign of letting go of things, of like giving away things. So spouse will also have that kind of nature very strongly. Like they will not think so much about themselves. They will be very selfless in nature. They will do things for you very selflessly. So that is one very strong positive aspect of the sign of Pisces. Spouse can be a bit of a daydreamer, so imagination and daydreaming, all this also comes from the sign of Pisces. And spouse will love sleeping. So that is something which you will see with this particular Rashi very strong. And the spouse will also be lazy, so laziness also comes from the sign of Pisces. They are not really people who are very bothered about quickness, like they are not people who are believe in doing things, picking, boxes and like making a checklist. They are not people like that. So they go with the flow. Whatever feels convenient to them, comfortable to them, intuitive, to them, then only they will do and work. So you can't really push them and force them to do things. When their mood will be like, they will do things. So that is how this particular Rashi really operates. And we also see with the sign of Pisces that they are people who are very close to nature. So they would love going to beaches, like spending time close to water, and spending time close with animals. So everything which comes and forms a part of the nature, that is something which it is very close to them. They really, really love, spending time with them. And you will also see that they might have a tendency to become a bit absent minded. When you are like talking to them, they will become lost in their own thoughts. Like it will like you will think that they're listening to you, but somewhere they are not, and their mind is somewhere else. That is also a possibility with this. But overall, you will observe one thing very strongly, that peaceful. Peaceful is the word that comes to my mind when I think about the sign of Pisces. And letting go of things very easily, very forgiving nature. So very open-minded, very broad-minded with respect to a lot of things. So those are all positive aspects of a Pisces sign. They can also be very spiritual, or the spouse can be involved in doing yoga and meditation. Those things become very prominent with the sign of Pisces. But overall, a very beautiful sign, very harmonious sign. There is nothing bad to say about this sign. But again, depending upon the planet that is placed there, things can differ and change a lot. So again, I'm saying that you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because like if you have Rahu placed there, if you have Saturn placed there, then things will change a lot. It will no longer be that peaceful. With like suppose you have Mars, Saturn placed in Pisces, then results will definitely differ a lot. So, but if suppose you have like soft planets, in Pisces, like you have Moon in Pisces, you have Venus there, Mercury there, then you can still say the element of the sign and the element of the planet is kind of resonating together. So that sameness will be there. But if you have cruel planets over there, like cruel as in like a little bit cruel planets like Mars, Saturn, Rahu, Ketu, so they are known as cruel planets. So they will not resonate well with the element, So they are planets who are very straightforward, very blunt. So it goes against the energy of the sign. So then again, things will differ uh, a bit in that. So this is how we need to assess and see. So I hope that you enjoyed, watching this video. And one last thing about the sign of Pisces is also with respect to the complexion part and with respect to the height part. So Pisces also, as we know that it is represented by two fishes. So that indecisiveness is also a bit there in that sign. And with respect to the complexion, also what is mentioned in the classical text, that is what I'm seeing. Like especially in Jatak Parijata, if you see, it is mentioned as white. So white is a color which is given to Pisces sign. But again, this is irrespective of the aspects on it, or suppose you have a planet placed there, like it is excluding that, so not irrespective, excluding that. Like if you have, suppose, a planet placed there, like if you have Mars there, then Mars will give a very different complexion, like it gives more of like a blood red complexion, short height. So those characteristics will now dominate. You no longer have to see Pisces then. But if you have no planet placed there, if you just have Pisces sign without any such malefic aspects, then this is the kind of result that you can expect. Like, so I'm not, that is why, giving so much importance and weightage to the complexion appearance part, but what is mentioned in the classical text about the signs with respect to the height and the complexion, because in most of the cases it will differ, because some aspect or some conjunction of planet might be there in the seventh house, some planet might be there in the seventh house. So then again, things will start differing and changing. But overall, this is how we need to study about the nature, qualities, characteristics of the spouse. And I will make another video on this in which I will be covering the planets. So we will be talking about all the different planets in the seventh house of the Navamsa chart. So that will come in the part two of this video. So I hope that you learned something new from this, and thank you so much for watching, and see you all the next time.